Welcome back to another daily Bible reading. We are in the book of Matthew.
We are.
And we are in, a chapter that can give a lot of people angst.
Yes, it can.
Matthew chapter 19, the teachings on divorce. But
some people want to dismiss it, act like it's not there. Yeah. It's there, and it needs to be taken seriously. We need to take it as seriously as is the intent of Scripture.
Yeah, and what we're going to do, once again, this lesson is not a lesson on marriage, divorce, remarriage. This is a daily Bible reading of Matthew 19. And what we're going to do, like we've been doing with everything else, we're going to put it in the context of the discussions that Jesus has been having. And the discussion that Jesus has been having are these upside down relationships where the world does one thing one way. And he started off, and I think this is important, he started off this discussion with those who want to be great must serve. And so there's these authority positions that are actually about serving. And when that is messed up, as we're going to see, that is when hardness of hearts come in, and that's when God's original design for things get changed, messed up, and we have to try our hardest as people who are living in the kingdom to do things God's way. And we won't even have to have this discussion. Yeah. It's when people aren't doing what God has asked us to do is when we... So, Matthew 19, I think it's my turn to read first. And this whole chapter is 30 verses, so I'll probably read all the way to 15 and let you read the rest. Sound good?
Remind me, because you know how I am.
Or you'll just take over and start reading.
I'll just tell him.
It's all right, though. So now when Jesus had finished these sayings, he went away from Galilee and entered the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. Large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. And he starts every teaching with all these things with healing people. Pharisees came to him and tested him by asking.
Again?
So, first and foremost, the Pharisees are not looking for an answer. They're looking to trip him up.
They're testing him.
With everything else. Give us a sign.
Yeah.
They're trying to accumulate evidence.
Next thing. They never do quite get what they want, so they just kill him. And
so Jesus usually does something that's pretty, where they can do nothing. They can't take him to task.
Right.
All right. So, and I think that's what Jesus is going to be doing here. Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?
Any reason at all, and that's an important aspect of this, because what's going on here, they're wanting to pit one rabbi against another rabbi and see where Jesus falls, and wherever he falls, they're probably going to get him at that. But one of the things, rabbis like to parse words, and then any reason at all gets to be thrown into all this as anything you can imagine can let you divorce.
Yeah, because when you go back to Deuteronomy, when Moses, as we're going to talk about, Moses allowed the certificate of divorce, when you look at the very first verse in there, that any cause, is it translated any cause? Is it translated, a sexual sin? What is it? So they're debating, basically, what does this one Hebrew word mean?
and guess what was the most popular view? It doesn't matter, just do what you want to.
Yeah.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah.
Human beings.
Oh, man. So, he answered, in Jesus-like fashion. Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And, okay, so here's what we have to do. Jesus is not dismissing what Moses did. He's actually letting them take the full picture.
Go all the way back to where it started.
Go all the way back to where it started. Look at God's original intent. What did he intend? First, that answers your question. Should divorce be a discussion we're having? No, it should be man and woman for the rest of our life. But we live in a world...
What does marriage look like from God's point of view? That's what they ought to have been thinking about.
But that's when you have an ideal man and an ideal woman. But what happens when you're in a relationship with someone who's a good-for-nothing, jerk, whether it's the male or the female? We have just as many cases on both sides in today. So we still have to deal with real life.
We do.
And marriage cannot be absolved from real life stuff.
No, it cannot.
It can't.
And two, a question that isn't here asked really, but is nevertheless part of the overall discussion, is do you have to live with somebody you're married to no matter what? Well, no, you don't.
Yeah. Yep. So, and he said, therefore.
Wait, let me stop you again.
No, please do.
Male and female. There are, because of the gene pool and abnormalities and this and that, there are some gender questions that it is not easy to say what's what. There's ambiguity. It's the smallest part of it, but it is a part of it. That said, male and female, your DNA basically declares who you are. Your emotions may not go along with it. All kinds of things might not go along with it. And that can be a big problem, and it can be something you need to get help with. But at the end of the day, male and female is how God created us.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Therefore, he says, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one. So,
that's a problem right there. People who don't leave their mother and father. The mother and father are part of the relationship in a way that they shouldn't be. So leave and cleave.
I bet you that causes more divorces or problems at least than anything. But yeah, this leave and cleave. And Jesus is wanting us to understand that when you take on the task, okay, so this is interesting because like when you join the kingdom, there's a commitment level that if you're not willing to deny self, pick up your cross and follow him, don't do it.
Right.
Here, there's a commitment level to marriage.
You're not willing to do it?
If you're not willing to take her for life, and if that's not your goal, your aim, and your desire.
And you have a separate family now that is coming to being that your allegiance is supposed to be with?
Yeah, because how many people in today's world go, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always find another one.
Oh, yeah.
So they go into marriage realizing it's probably not going to work out.
Yeah, we'll give it a test. Guess what happens when you do that? Pretty much it's
yep.
over.
And I was reading a stat a month or two ago about in the first century Jewish culture, the divorce rate was like 70% plus.
Oh, and in Roman world, Greek world, all the same, which you could get that. I mean, if it is for any cause at all, and that's the most popular view, and men being as they are, and women not being able to get divorced in Jewish culture, you're going to have a lot of guys just say, I'm just over this.
Yeah, and I just find it interesting that it takes someone to come up to Jesus to ask the question for Jesus to get into the discussion, because what he's wanting to build is something that I think if you can get the kingdom life right, marriages will work itself out. You don't need to have a class on marriage, divorce, remarriage if everybody is just following and serving Jesus in the kingdom.
Yes, you ought to start with what it's supposed to be. Ephesians, with the man and the woman that's really about Christ and the church. If men and women went into marriage in our imperfections, but we had that as our goal, and that was what we committed ourselves to because Jesus wanted us to, we would have a lot better marriages around about.
Absolutely. And that's what Jesus is about to discuss, actually. It says, they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. They said to him, and he knew this was coming, because this is the debate right here. Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away? And he said to them, because of your hardness of hearts. Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. So we have to ask the question, did what Moses do was a legitimate thing that God gave him to do? Well, one, it's in the Torah. It's recorded for us.
And that's inspired.
It's found in the Torah. It's found in the teachings of God. And secondly, if you actually go read the Deuteronomy verse, it's more about protecting women than divorce.
It is. Because
women were being thrown around. Men would get rid of them, get rid of her, go find another one, and then later try to claim her back.
Yeah, and God's trying to, on a practical level, put that to a stop. Yeah. And again, there are discussions that deal with if a certificate is given, if a certificate is not given, or whatever. But if a certificate was given in that situation, it gave her some legal right and protection.
Yeah, because they had no legal right. And by the way, women could not, in a Jewish culture, initiate the divorce. So, now even that's debated a little bit, but majority of you had nothing if you left your husband.
Hence, Jesus says in 5 of Matthew, you cause her to commit adultery because she's out there by herself and she's going to just
because she left and cleft or leaved and cleaved. She left.
We've invented new words here. You were here.
But that's the thing, and this is a part of a Jewish community. When you leave one family to join another, that family, your family, is not done with you, but you're financially responsible from your husband now. And if you leave that, you're hoping your family takes you back in, but it's not always the case.
They're not.
Because divorce was a shame, guilt, kind of culture, shame culture. So, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, or just immorality, and marries another commits adultery. And so, that's, the word for immorality is a general word.
It is. The question would be, and it's still a debatable question in many respects, in this context, how is it being, a Jewish context, how is this being used? If you were in a Greek context, you might see it differently. But how would you see it in a Jewish context? One of the things you would have to conclude is this involves some kind of illicit sexual behavior that you shouldn't be doing as a married person.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, a part of becoming one flesh. I mean, there's sex involved in that, in the sense of when you give your body to somebody, as Paul will bring up in Corinthians, your body is no longer your own. And then you're lending that out to somebody else.
That's
You've
bad
broken
stuff.
the covenant.
Yes.
And that's the point, that you've broken the most sacred aspect of the covenant.
You have committed adultery.
And then trust is no longer there. Trust is very hard. It's not that it can't be gained back.
No,
I've seen it done.
Yes, but it's hard. I mean, that's
But
the
even when it's
ultimate
done, there's-
betrayal that your mate could do to you.
Absolutely. So the disciples said to him, if such, and they get it.
Oh, yeah.
They get.
They're not thinking it's some la-di-da thing.
Yeah. If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry.
That says you something about the culture, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the culture already had this for anything.
Burn the toast.
Burn the toast kind of mentality. Because, man, it's scary. You got to choose one person to be with the rest of your life.
No. And
What
to
if you
our
mess
flesh, our animal side, if you will, I mean, dogs don't do that. So the question here is, should we be able to just do whatever we feel like doing because we're men, and if we get tired of them, we can get another one? Well, no.
No, absolutely not. But he said to them, not everyone can receive the saying, but only those to whom it is given. And I'm telling you, you can read this, and there are people who still believe you can get divorced for any which reason. And it's just, the divorce is just kind of like a natural part of life. I don't know how no matter what your take is on marriage, divorce, remarriage,
that can't be right.
You can't walk away from this and not see the sacredness of marriage that is very severe. God cares a whole lot about how we handle it and deal with it. And the first and foremost, God wants your wife of your youth, as the Old Testament would say, to be your wife of old age.
God
as
hates
well.
divorce.
Yeah.
So he wants this to be something, he wants us to understand serious stuff that can have some complications and consequences to it that you may have to live with the rest of your life.
Yeah, but I want you to know, if you are listening, if there is a relationship that you are in that is dangerous, that is not healthy, this is not talking about that you cannot separate yourself from that to get help.
In 1 Corinthians, there's an occasion if a pagan leaves a Christian, and in essence, you don't have to follow along with that person. There are other things to discuss there, but I'm just looking at that point of it. You're not a slave to have to be where that man is, because if he didn't want you, that's really going to be bad. So this isn't talking about you have to be in physical proximity to somebody, because that can be something that a person violates that right by the way that they behave toward their mate.
Absolutely.
As far as physical proximity is concerned.
But he said, not everyone will receive the saying, for there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men. There are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive this receive it. And so there are times where there are your own circumstances in your life, things that have happened to you, maybe born a eunuch, somebody made you a eunuch.
One.
The kingdom of heaven is now, as Paul would say, not about food and drink. It's not about marriage and not marriage. Like, you can still serve.
About sex primarily either.
You can still serve God like Paul did, not go the marriage route, though I believe Paul was probably married
for the kingdom's
He was
sake.
probably married at one time. Paul was.
At some point, though, he decided that's not for me.
Yeah, or
And
his
he
wife
even said,
died or
that
something.
doesn't mean that's
happened.
for everybody.
Yes. But at his point in his life, when he's writing Corinthians, he didn't plan on it, and he felt like he could focus all of his energy on the kingdom. It is okay to be single for Jesus and to remain single if you use that time and energy to serve the kingdom.
I had a class one time, a person walked out of me on the class in anger, and we're cool now, but in the 50 cents of cool. But I was saying that I was doing a Genesis thing, and I said the ideal situation, is a man and a woman for life.
Yeah.
If you are single, that does not mean that you cannot have a very good relationship with God, but the creation order of the ideal is a man and a woman together for life.
Yeah. It's the complement, and I think that's where the complementarian view comes into play, is that, when you talk about gender roles, and there's the egalitarian where they're all equal, And there's the complementary view, which I think the Bible holds, is the fact that a companion is something that is not necessary, but it's a part of the design of Adam knowing he needs something. And both sides of the case.
And your life can be enriched by that.
Yes, very fulfilling. It can also be a nuisance.
That's another thing.
All right, verse 13. Then the children were brought to him that he might lay his hands on them and pray, which was a common practice.
The kiddos are back.
Yep. The disciples rebuked the people. But Jesus said, let the little children come to me. Do not hinder them, for such belongs the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and went away. He just got done talking about this a couple days ago, that do not hinder children. It's all about become like children, let the little children come, and then actual little children come, and they want nothing to do with
Culture's such a strong hold on people. To knee-jerk reaction, intuitive reaction, be something like this when Jesus says, no, that's really not how I want you to behave with those little guys.
Now it's your turn.
Sure. Yes. The rich young ruler. Someone came to him and said, Teacher, what good thing? Now, this is Matthew, and he's talking to a Pharisaical mentality of religion. I think it is a key that in this rendering, you can look at the others, and there are other things that come out. This is the mentality, maybe there's a thing I need to do to get right with God or be right with God. Maybe there's one thing I haven't done in a list of things that I could do to inherit eternal life. And he said,
so I want to say something.
Okay.
And that goes, you just kind of brought up something. The fact that Matthew records this differently than Luke and Mark, it is not someone taking the story and changing it.
No.
Okay, so if I have a story, most of the time there's an overall point to the story, right?
There is, and you may have this audience or that audience or that audience. It could cause you to develop the same story without doing violence to anything in it a different way.
If you're telling this story to a child, you want to use different terminology.
Exactly.
It may not have been in the terms that were actually used, but you're saying the same thing. You're getting the point across, and that's exactly what he's doing. Talking to a Jewish audience, this would have hit harder.
Like in Acts, people will say, well, here, they aren't always told the same thing to do to become a Christian. Well, that's because they're at different places in their life, and some have already done some of these things, and they need to do this and that. Others need to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So where are you?
Well, I mean, like, let's say me and you, we went on visiting last week to the same house. If you were to explain the visit, there would be key features that you would bring up that maybe when I told it, I'd bring up different key features.
And we wouldn't be in contradiction.
We wouldn't be in contradiction with each other. All right.
And he said to him, is it my turn?
Yes.
I got carried
Sorry.
away there. No, you're good. And he said to him, why are you asking me about what is good? There's only one who is good, but if you wish to enter the kingdom, keep the commandments. Now, there's another thing I think is very Jewish, very Matthew. Who do you think I am? Do you think I'm the Messiah, Son of God?
Yeah.
If you're coming to me thinking that, then okay, we'll talk about that. But what are you just saying? You're a good man and all this. So he's all he's been working on up to this point is, will you accept me for who I am? And if you do, what does that mean? So I think that's part of what's going on here.
And when you accept Jesus, there are certain questions that are asked. When you're doubting, there are certain questions that are asked. And when you are completely against, there are other questions.
So he's wanting to know, what do you mean here?
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
I think the rich young ruler is kind of a neutral. He's still on the verge. He doesn't know.
Seen some good things, but
he's seeing some good things, but as we get, he's not fully convinced.
No, he has not put both feet down, has he? No, he has not. So Jesus is going to play into his question and expose some things. Then he said to him, which ones? And Jesus said, you shall not commit murder, you shall not commit adultery, you should not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you should honor your father and mother, and you should love your neighbor as yourself. It's sort of a
summed up to 10.
The essence of what's going on there. And the young man said to him, all these things I have kept. What, we could even put in here, I think, thing, am I still lacking? So Jesus is getting him to ask the question he needs to ask.
But there's some self-recognition here. He's done all these things. And once again, Matthew has been showing us, and Jesus has been showing us, that it's not about all these outward did. There's something else inside.
You can't do enough.
And he's not feeling it.
No.
He's not
He's a thing guy out here.
He did the things, but there's something missing inside.
You got something I need to check off out there? Well, he's got something bigger than that.
Yeah.
if you wish to be complete, whole, if you really want to get this to where it needs to be with God, as opposed to just the outward things, which the Pharisees had influenced people to do, go and sell your possessions. How many people did Jesus tell this to? Go and sell your possessions. One, that'd be this guy. Okay, so this is not what you do. Everybody does, because, wow, well, let's look and see. Give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me. Whoa, what an opportunity. People would come to Jesus, and he said, no, go on back home. This guy has a chance to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
But when the young man heard this statement, he went away grieving, for he was one who had owned much property. Got a lot of stuff. And guess what means more to him? Stuff. So what does Jesus want him to see? Basically, you're possessed by your possessions, so let's get rid of them and move along. Everybody has something perhaps that they need to get rid of if they can't move forward. Whatever it is, as we looked about earlier, or whatever we discover it to be as we become Christians, we need to get rid of it. And Jesus said to his disciples, truly I say to you, it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And this isn't some squirrely thing about the gates outside of Jerusalem. This is literally a needle. It's hard. It's a hyperbole. Than for a rich man to enter in the kingdom of heaven. So they immediately react by taking this more literally than they should. The disciples heard this. They said, they were very astonished. They said, then who can be saved? And looking at them, Jesus said to them, with people, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible.
So I think that statement, because both the disciples have the same reaction to marriage, divorce, remarriage, to this,
Like,
which are two staples. Money, which is essential for life, marriage, all those kinds of things.
Being free to do what you want to with marriage, yeah.
And I think this answer could serve both statements in the sense of, once again, Jesus does say it is very difficult for a rich man, but with God.
A marriage situation may be a difficult one to get where it needs to be.
Yeah.
But
with God. And, forgiveness comes in, redemption comes in, mercy, compassion, all those kinds of things come in. But even with the rich man, if he would have given his trust, seek first the kingdom of God, he's already established all these things that you're worried about and concerned about will be added. Have you been listening? Do you trust that I'll take care of you? And
he's only listened to what he wants to hear. And when it comes down to, you say I'm God? You say I'm the Messiah, which had implications.
So
and no, he's not saying that.
No. And rich people, by the way, can make good Christians.
They can. In fact, Paul tells them, use those for blessings in the kingdom.
Yeah.
He didn't say get rid of it. He said, use it for blessings.
Jesus is specifically saying that if you have God on your side, a rich man in the kingdom could be great. Now, those riches have to be put in place, and that's the hardest part.
If you're possessed by your possessions, you can only serve one master.
Yeah.
And if you can't serve with that there, get rid of it.
Absolutely.
Then Peter said to him, behold, we've left everything and followed you. And what then will there be for us? And Jesus said to him, truly I say to you, that you who have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man will sit his glorious throne, you also shall sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses and brothers and sisters and father or mother or children and farms for my sake will receive many times as much and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. So, wow, there is a way that's easier than going through the eye of a needle if you're trusting in God.
Absolutely.
But if you're not so much. So he's saying, Peter, you can have all this stuff and more than this guy has, this rich man and his status and everything else. You can have infinitely more than he ever thought about having if you put me first.
Yeah, because Peter's basically seeing this from the flip side, going, hey, I've done this.
Yeah. Am I not worthy?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, it's not about being worthy.
In that last verse, first shall be last.
Last shall be first. Can be a very scary verse,
Yeah.
or a very comforting verse.
Yeah. And if you humble yourself before the mighty hand of the Lord, He will exalt you.
He will lift you up.
And if you trust that, you'll do it without
If you
question.
don't, you won't.
You'll try to put yourself first. Well, I think that's enough of our shenanigans for Matthew 19.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Once again, we thank you for listening. Once again, we're trying to help you to really stick to what is being told right here and right now. Sometimes we jump first to all these other places, but what would they have understood here? How is Matthew using it? Giving you some good Bible study tips along the way.
And be true to what you see in the text.
Yeah.
Don't try to make it us included, something you want that God doesn't want.
Absolutely. So we love you,
Yes, we do.
and God bless.
Bye-bye.